TUNIC. TUNIC. Game of the year. Game of the year. By now, you've probably heard about TUNIC's cute little instruction manual. I wouldn't say that a diegetic enclosed instruction book is a neat distraction or an indie gimmick. No, the instruction manual is the artistic point of the game. Sequelitis Mega Man X and Extra Credits taught us that you can do a tutorial with text, but doing it through layout is faster, more efficient, quote-unquote better. However, if the past 10 years of games have anything to say, then there are more layers than that. There is art in exposition. There are multiple ways to tutorialize a game and still have that tutorial be not only fun, but artistically interesting. Aha, you can tell this one's scripted, baby. That's just too fucking bad. TUNIC's instruction manual is not only a work of art because it is visually beautiful and is full of cute drawings, it is a work of art because it exposits information to the player in an intentional, artistic manner. The order in which pages are found is somewhat set. At first, information is told immediately before it is relevant. However, there are many examples of pages being found which aren't immediately relevant to the player, yet contain vital information nonetheless. The player must remember to consult the manual often, because it will take multiple viewings to decipher what it has to say and how what it says is relevant to the player. There are abilities and aspects to TUNIC which aren't locked arbitrarily. The player is always able to perform and access them if only they knew that these things existed. TUNIC's instruction manual uses symbols and choice English words to point the player to these discoveries without explaining completely what they are, which makes learning basic mechanics of the game feel exciting and personal. What I'm saying is, TUNIC's exposition is evocative. Case study: The Lantern. Zelda fans might note that dungeon layouts are quite basic in TUNIC, but that doesn't make them less interesting than Zelda dungeons, because, in TUNIC, the lantern isn't given to the player for free, and it's not in a big chest that appears after slaying a mini-boss either. Not only is it hidden, but its existence and location must be deciphered in the manual and found in the overworld. You don't go on an explicitly stated quest for the lantern, you have a vague notion that you need a lantern, and you go out looking for one, but you're not sure when or where you're going to find it. It's not in a reverent location, it's somewhere. The manual makes the player think the lantern is somewhere in this area, but that's all the player can confidently conclude. That makes discovering the lantern fun and interesting, and maybe as complex as a traditional Link to the Past puzzle. On paper, it is as simple as the player needing a lantern to see in the dark, and they find one. But there's static. There's mental static. The player isn't sure if the lantern is exactly what they're supposed to do next on their quest. They're not sure if they're going the right way to find it, because the game isn't holding their hand so tightly. The genre tropes are there, but it's distorted and out of order. It's intimate. It's personal. It makes the player feel like the discovery is theirs. It evokes the feeling that this world isn't designed explicitly to necessitate the player's success. It's verisimilitude, and it makes the game feel so much bigger than it is. Additionally, due to the somewhat open-ended layout of the game world and mechanics, some abilities can be discovered purely on their own, only to be half explained by the instruction book hours later. This isn't the best way, or the most efficient, or the most elegant way to exposit players on its game mechanics, but it is the way the artist chose to exposit information, and the way that this information is exposited evokes mystery and discovery and wonder. It conditions players to be curious and to explore every nook and cranny of the world, and their inventory, and of the booklet itself, for doing so is often rewarded. Because abilities in TUNIC are inherent and need only to be discovered by the player, TUNIC is, like Outer Wilds, like The Witness, like Dark Souls, and like Undertale, a game which cannot be played for the first time ever again, which is incredibly based. However, because TUNIC is a more traditional video game with violence, murder, collection, and conquest, a second or third playthrough won't be diminished by already having the knowledge. Instead, they will transform the second adventure into a remix of the first, out of order, with different, but not worse, pacing. I hope that people take away from TUNIC that the manner in which information is exposited to the player is an art in and of itself. It's not something that needs to be gotten out of the way at the start of a game, before the real adventure can start. Deep games are games in which new mechanics and dynamics are being discovered throughout the game's entire playtime, and even into repeat playthroughs. The tutorial is the game. The entire game is the tutorial. That's a trait of the medium of interactive art. Not every game has to be like this, but it's a ripe and juicy aspect of games, which I can't wait to see more of in the future. I hope to fucking God that sounds interesting. I think it does. I fucking think it does. I think it does. But golly gee whiz. Here's a second sub video after the first video, which is how Steeb videos tend to go. Dark Souls inspiration. Tunic is obviously inspired by the hit 2011 cult classic Dark Souls 1. Tunic features bosses which don't flinch to player attack and require rolling at the right time 80 times in a row to proceed. However, Tunic is also inspired by Dark Souls in ways that I actually fucking respect. Resource management. Tunic's low health pool and thin resources necessitate players to manage their risks in general overworld traversal. The boss isn't the only place in the game in which Tunic is traditionally challenging. General adventuring and monster slaying is not mindless. Enemies have aggro, strengths and weaknesses, and manipulatable behavior, and are often laid out in the world in varying combinations to create a variety of combat scenarios between bonfires. There are many scenarios in which players must choose between using a valuable resource or taking a dangerous risk to proceed. That's something that even Dark Souls has diminished over its own series. Secret hiding. Tunic looks at Dark Souls 1's double illusory wall to the Great Hollow and Ash Lake and says, "That's great, I want more games to have that." Secrets are everywhere in Tunic, including behind other secrets. The overworld has secrets, the instruction booklet has secrets, your controller has secrets, the menu has secrets, combat has secrets, multiple of them. Tunic also has an ARG. The thoroughness and creativity of secrets go a long way in ensuring Tunic always evokes mystery and discovery, even deep into post-game. Story. Tunic tells a complete feeling story in a manner which feels initially incomplete. The game world outside of the instruction booklet features very little text, and the content within the booklet is written in a made-up language which players can translate later. If you're a fucking genius, I guess. I can't wait for these things to be dumbed down enough for me to actually be able to learn how to translate them myself and not just Google everything. Anyway, it's clear that the story of Tunic has a dramatic through line, a beginning, middle, and satisfactory conclusion. It's clear that the literary story of Tunic has themes, but the way in which it is presented is minimalist. It's really not enough to be inspired by Dark Souls by way of having a stamina meter which actually matters, and having large boss fights which more and more resemble MMORPG combat. Dark Souls gained its success not because it was hard, but because it was evocative and interesting. Man, I just fucking love Tunic. Tunic looks good, Tunic sounds good, Tunic animates well, Tunic's adorable, the character designs in Tunic, the monster designs are really nice, the drawings are fucking lovely. He's just a boy, he's just a little guy, look at him, he's just a little guy, look at him run around. Head empty, not a thought in the world. Good colors, cute as hell. Tunic, really fucking good, really fucking fun, really nice. Really based. Good. Great. Game of the year. Stray is also good. Oh, soundtrack of the decade. Thanks, Lifeformed. Thank you. Thanks, Lifeformed. Beautiful. Amazing. Amazing soundtrack. I love it. Thanks, Lifeformed.